Welcome to Nebraska Farmcast, a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I'm Ryan Evans. Here in Nebraska, so many of us love the rural lifestyle, but it can present challenges for the provision of key services and infrastructure in those areas. Cheryl Burkhart-Kriesel, a professor in UNL's Agricultural Economics Department and an extension specialist with Rural Prosperity Nebraska, has a new article looking at some data about the more sparsely populated areas of the state and what it means to live there. That's available on our Center for Ag Profitability site at cap.unl.edu. And she joins me now. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Evan. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for being here again. And as I said in this new article, you cite that Nebraska has 530 incorporated places. What does the total population look like then, numbers-wise, across these communities?
Well, I think anybody who drives our state kind of intuitively knows that we're a state with a lot of small towns. And you're exactly right. And the reality is that 3/4 of these communities, that's 3/4 of that 530, are between 100 and 800 in population. You know, that's really pretty amazing. But the reality is that in Nebraska, we're not alone. We have other states around us, like North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Oklahoma, that are also really similar. And, you know, I link that back to us being a part of the Great Plains and actually going back to how we were settled, because that played a major role in what we look like today.
Yeah, and with so many really small communities, is there a lot of local government in place in these villages and towns with 100 to 800 people? Or are there other systems that you're aware of that need to be relied on in a lot of these places for getting things done?
Well, there are a lot of, small community, like village boards and groups that meet that are the public face. But to be honest, official paid staff is really far and few between. And so in reality, volunteers have to do a lot or things just don't happen. And those volunteers could be connected to civic groups, and usually those are groups of all kinds. And they really just kind of roll up their sleeves and make things happen. And so, for instance, you might see them caring or adding to their local parks or cemeteries or school grounds, even sprucing up main streets. Volunteers do a lot in these small communities, and they kind of have to. But that's also not easy. Just think about your own life and how you might have to or would have to volunteer. And they're not only volunteering time, a lot of times they're volunteering money and resources and supplies to make these communities kind of what they are.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really interesting statistic to me in the article that 12 out of the 93 counties here in Nebraska, what you call frontier counties, they have populations under 1,000, with some even under 500 for the entire county. So the views in a lot of these places are sure breathtaking, but how do you see needs being met there in terms of access to things like healthcare and education and infrastructure?
Well, to be honest, my hat goes off to those places with those very low populations because they've got to be creative. They just have to be. Now, you might think, why don't some of these counties with such low populations join another county or consolidate? And to be honest, sometimes we put in place public policies that make it kind of difficult for that to happen. And so at least at one time, to the best of my knowledge, if a county, for instance, with a low population wanted to like consolidate or join another county, well, you have to be sort of voted in by that neighbor. And to be honest, that other county might incur a lot of extra costs. And just think in terms of like road maintenance, for instance. Yeah. And so that really makes it kind of prohibitive or negative to be a part of that process. And so, joining forces or consolidating formally sometimes doesn't work. So that's where sometimes informal actions are maybe the best route. So you have to think, again, creatively about what has to happen. And so what you see often is maybe a county or community contracting with services with someone else that's close by. And that can be a way to kind of bridge or make things happen. But still, to be honest, keeping schools, courthouses, or, just minimal government kind of access, and even healthcare can be really a struggle. And sometimes compromises need to be made and trade-offs are made.
Yeah, great points on having to get creative then and seek out those partnerships. And however small they may be, are these population numbers in areas like these being maintained, do you know, or are they seeing decreases year after year? And do you have any idea what the projections are for the future?
Sure. So crystal balls are always just that. They're kind of your best guess in their projections. But you can do a good job of, based on trends, what that might be. So I did run across some projections, population projections, that actually the UNO Center for Public Affairs generated, actually on the request by our unicameral. And they had listed county population projections into 2050. And this document actually is on their UNO website. So there are some counties in that projection where the population goes up, as one would expect. Some stabilize, but there's also a number of counties where that rural population declines and continues to decline. In fact, the projections that they had is that for those frontier counties, those under 1,000 in population, will actually will increase by 2. So we'll go from 12 to 14 by 2050. And again, to manage those declining counties, they'll really need to be creative and realistically decide what they need and how it can be delivered. But there is a caveat to this. So you've got to remember that projections are just that. They're projections. And so they're based on assumptions. And those can change. So really, it's kind of about the action that communities take now could make a huge difference to help possibly stabilize or increase their population. But it's really up to them. It's how they want to see that future and how they can direct that future.
All right, great stuff from Cheryl Burkhart-Kriesel, a professor in the Department of Agricultural Economics here at UNL and an extension specialist with Rural Prosperity Nebraska. And you can find a new article up on our website at cap.unl.edu by Dr. Burkhart-Kriesel about what we've been talking about here in this podcast. And Cheryl, I want to thank you for the time and the great information and insight today.
Thank you.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.